I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Juliana Fanous. I'm a project coordinator for the Green Municipal Fund at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Today's webinar is the first of a 5-part webinar series on best practices in municipal sustainability. Each week we're going to be covering a different sector, but today we're going to be focusing on opportunities and innovations in energy management. Although this webinar is offered in English, you're welcome to ask questions in French as well. And if you do have colleagues that are missing today's webinar, the session is also being recorded and will be available on FCM's YouTube channel in just a few weeks. Before I introduce today's speakers, I'd like to take just a few minutes to provide a little bit of context into the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Green Municipal Fund. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities, also known as FCM, has been the national voice of municipal government since 1901, with diverse programs and services that are designed to support municipalities. Our largest program is the Green Municipal Fund, or GMF, and it was established in 2000. GMF is now a $1 billion program funded by the Government of Canada to support municipal efforts to improve air, water, and soil quality. The fund is open to municipalities, large and small, in every province and territory. So this fund has a double mission: to support municipal initiatives in sustainable development through funding, and also to share knowledge and lessons learned through online resources and tools, trainings, peer learning activities, and networking opportunities. The Green Municipal Fund is currently available for projects in 5 different sectors: energy performance, which my colleague Rachel will be speaking to later on, waste reduction, brownfields, transportation, and water performance. Since its inception, GMF has funded more than 1,400 initiatives in over 500 communities across Canada. If you do want to learn a little bit more about these initiatives, our approved projects database is a wealth of resources on our funded projects, including things like case studies, reports, contact information, and more. So I'd encourage you to take a look at the link we just are about to send in the chat box. You should also feel free to sign up for our weekly newsletter, FCM Connect, to get all the latest updates on what FCM has to offer. We also strongly encourage you to apply for FCM's 2020 Sustainable Communities Awards before the March 31st deadline. These awards recognize Canada's most innovative local sustainability projects in 9 different categories and include asset management, brownfields, climate change, energy, neighborhoods, transportation, waste, water, and this new GMF 20th Anniversary Visionary Award. Which reminds me, you should all come and join us at the Sustainable Communities Conference in 2020, taking place in October in St. John's, Newfoundland. So this is a great opportunity to celebrate GMF's 20th anniversary, and it's really applicable whether your community is at the planning stage, running a pilot project, or ready to embark on a capital project. The program will deliver relevant and interactive content that brings fresh insights to the challenges that we all face in our communities, and you'll also benefit from in-depth knowledge on how to access GMF's new funding offer. Registration opens online at 1 p.m. on March 23rd. So we already started taking a look at who's joined us on the line today, but we can see that a lot of you have a wide range of backgrounds and experiences. So a lot of you are currently working in climate and energy as expected, but we also have a few engineers on the line, people working in asset management, sustainability, among others, and you're definitely coming from all parts of the country, so it's really great to have you here with us. So together, over the next 5 weeks, these webinars are intended to demonstrate and showcase how Canadian communities are tackling their environmental challenges by launching innovative projects in the energy, transportation, land use, waste, and water sectors, respectively. You will have the opportunity to learn more about these leading solutions that not only generate significant reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, but they also focus on social and economic benefits. In addition to profiling these projects over the course of the series, the first 2 weeks will also shed light more specifically on GMF's funding opportunities for these sectors. The following 3 sessions in land use, waste, and water will feature key research findings from sector research, articulate insights on municipal trends, as well as analyze the drivers and needs of these 3 areas. Today's session in particular will spotlight an innovative social housing transformation project in Hamilton, and will also present how GMF can help support your next energy efficiency initiatives. We are fortunate today to be joined by 3 panelists. We have Tom Hunter and Sean Botham from CityHousing Hamilton and Rachel Deslauriers from FCM. So thank you all for joining us today. And before I turn the floor over to you, just a few last-minute housekeeping items. Tom and Sean will present for about 15 minutes, followed by Rachel, leaving about 20 minutes or so for questions. So please send us your questions through the question and chat function, and we'll respond to them once the presentations are complete. We'll aim to move through as many of these as we can during our time. First, we'll start off with the CityHousing Hamilton group. Tom Hunter is the CEO of CityHousing Hamilton and leads the strategic renewal and redevelopment of CityHousing Hamilton's portfolio, the first phase of which includes 4 new builds and 1 high-rise retrofit, all to the Passive House standard. CHH is also engaging in 2 development partnerships that will revitalize social housing communities while broadening the spectrum of affordability provided. An experienced senior leader from the healthcare sector, he has deep experience in fostering high-performance culture, guiding organizational transformation, and is known for his work in the field of mental health. Tom's integrated approach to understanding what impacts health outcomes has shaped his determination to create high-performance buildings that meet the needs of individuals while benefiting the local community and contribute to socially sustainable city. He champions the city's vision to be the best place to raise a child and age successfully, bringing a human-centered approach to housing. We're also joined today by Sean Botham. In his role as the development lead for Hamilton's municipally owned social and affordable housing provider, Sean guides the strategic renewal and redevelopment of CityHousing Hamilton's portfolio. The current scope of this work includes the development of 565 social housing units across the city, among which are several mid-rise new builds, the refurbishment of an aging high-rise that will be one of the largest Energy Fit certified projects in the world, and 2 mixed income community regeneration projects that incorporate over 1,000 units of private market housing. And with that, it is my pleasure to hand things over to you both. So we're just about to hand you control so you can move through your slides.
Thanks, Juliana. It's Tom, and I'm going to start the presentation, and I would like to just thank the many individuals who are participating in the webinar and hearing about this opportunity. And just a bit more specifically, what we're really excited about the 500 McNabb project, Passive House renewal. We see it as a marquee project for us, and really it's one of the first retrofits of its kind in Canada. I'm going to be providing the big idea and the second section of the presentation on the social housing context, and then Sean is going to move into the approaches and project, and what you see on your right is in fact that's at the tower. So just a bit on the big idea and speaking to feasibility and funding, but really it started. One day Sean kind of came to me and said, "Tom, I have this big idea," and it really was looking at how we take this building, this asset, which lacking in over time with capital repair, preventative maintenance, and then with the opportunity that existed around funding, how can we reposition this building to move from a liability to an asset? And this is just the front page of the feasibility study that was undertaken, and we in terms of scoping this out, really wanting to assess the opportunity and providing the rationale for our board and the city to look at going beyond a base state of good repair and instead taking a world-class approach at how do we revitalize this building and how do we take advantage, as I said, of applicable funding opportunities that were presenting itself at that time. Also, a bit around the leveraging the funding for this project. And really for us, what was key was the potential around energy and energy conservation, and then how this really translated into the health and well-being for the people who would live in that building, and also for the community in terms of decreased greenhouse gas emissions. And also another important element was accessibility, working towards enhanced accessibility with the project. And as well, that the funding came through CMHC, Innovation in the National Housing Strategy, through FCM, and also the provincial SHAPE funding. So those were the sources that we leveraged to achieve these objectives. Just a bit on I think important for us, and I think for those here on the line, is just around this context around social housing Hamilton and social housing, sorry, in Hamilton, and how we made, are making this happen. Speaking just quickly to those 4 points on the right-hand side. So first on affordability, this is just 3 definitions. I won't go through the first 2, but what we had to work on around the 500 NAP project was looking at those affordability standards through the National Housing Strategy to optimize the dollars for the project. And roughly out of the 146 units, about 115 are actually below 80% MMR. Also, just a bit about CityHousing Hamilton. On the bottom, you'll just see we're a board of councillors and citizens, 5 councillors, 4 citizens. We have 1,300 tenants across the 7,000 units. You can see there the breakdown of social and then affordable market. We have over $1 billion in insured assets. The challenge with that, though, the last point, is that we have an annual $18 million capital deficit. And this image graphic of Hamilton, the blue is the area in which is 500 NAB on the West Harbor, and then the other yellows are the properties across Hamilton in the east and primarily up on what we refer to as the mountain. So quite spread out. We just thought this, when you look at urban renewal, we just thought this was kind of interesting for this particular project. This is the north end of Hamilton, and this is from 1960. So, even then, the context around renewal, what you see in kind of the lighter, the flesh color was just what was supposed to happen, being the area, the north end of Hamilton, being those sections demolished, rebuilt. That never happened. But the blue that you did see, those in fact were the 2 areas, the circle being 500 NAB, which was built, and then the other square is Jamesville, which is another property that was built at that time, but we are actually also looking at renewing that with a public-private partnership. And then here, this was just a picture of the tower in the 60s, late 60s, and it's 146 units, 18 stories, and you can see the size of the building. And then here, what we just wanted, this is what part of the disrepair that really led us to the work that's so important. It just, this is the worst that we're showing you, but you can see that the top left-hand corner, typically nicotine stain versus the paint that was getting put on, mold remediation, disrepair areas, and the infrastructure with the lines and the cracks, and actually gaping holes. So here was part of our challenge to really look at, as we move forward, what do we best do to address the capital, state of this capital asset, and what to do around aspects for the lack of preventive maintenance that caused this over time. So that that was what we were faced with, and then looking at what was the best way forward. And I'll flip it over to Sean.
Great. So McNabb is the oldest building in our portfolio. It's really the canary in the coal mine for social housing, based on its age and level of underfunding. So this is really the first time we've had to figure out how to approach such a unique situation. So in early days, as we figured out how we were going to approach it, there were sort of 4 imperatives that emerged. So these are around bringing units back online, ensuring quality of life for the residents who are there, and then sort of metrics on operational sustainability and capital efficiency, essentially wanting to make just the right decisions for the long term. Then if we look at the redevelopment options, so we commissioned a study by Deloitte that investigated these very thoroughly. So the cost of these now reflect the order of magnitude cost for today, but the heart of the study was delving into these three options of sale and replacement, as well as demo and replacement on the site, and then renovation. And if you sort of imagine the different levels of renovation that could occur, you've got your building condition assessments, and you can base something on that as a base state of repairs. There's also a more traditional retrofit that includes some energy measures, as well as some quality of life upgrades that are just more natural to do and are commonly done. And then there's something going a bit farther, which is where we ended up landing. And with the funding available at the time, it was apparent that we could go this far if we were successful in winning. So and this would take the building to an ultra high level of performance, as well as provide a number of accessibility and social inclusion measures. So the value proposition, there's kind of two big decision points here. One was going with the full building retrofit, and essentially that came down to what you could call the efficiencies from streamlining and coordinating a number of retrofits in tandem. So it made sense for us to move forward everything at once. And then on high performance, so this was a leap we took, as you said, based on funding, but I mean, the rationale for it was the whole host of benefits, everything from improved indoor air quality to avoided operational costs and lower utilities, lower maintenance. All of these were wound up into that decision. But there were, of course, challenges, right? So, we would need to win that funding from FCM, from CMHC, from the province. We also needed to hire a CM or a GC, and then we had to relocate tenants because this was such invasive work. So no dollar signs here, but you can see the percentages of the allocation of funding between the various types of measures. And so we did all of these, or in the process of doing all of these, but you can see really the bulk of the costs are associated with a base repair and renewal that needed to happen no matter how we approached it. And then some of the quality of life items like cooling and sprinklering, these are, they're not necessary, but they sure are best practice, and we did everything we could to include them. And then the funding enabled works, which we're really excited about. This is just a unique, a unique situation, having a building in such disrepair and such an old age, and it actually allows us to do something innovative. So Jane was right. And getting into some particulars on the project, which I'm sure there'll be some geeky folks in the crowd, as well as some others who want to see all this. So we took this building. We're taking this building to a place where it's almost completely off gas. We could have made that move entirely, but it was a strategic move to keep some of it. But still a massive GHG reduction. It's designed for a changing climate. So we did weather modeling out 50 years. And, one of the cool things about this project is if we are without power and without heat for a few days, the building is still livable. We've had experiences with some of our other high rises and flooding and heat out where it's just not possible for residents to stay that long. So there's a resiliency built in here, and we'll dive into some of the other measures, but this is high level. You can see here, these are representative of some of the things we found and some of the things we did. So on the left, these are actual demising walls that had fire separations cut out after the building was built to put in the services. So you can imagine every apartment had several fire separation areas that were damaged like this. It was an odd design strategy, but all of those needed to be repaired. And that also would help with pest control. And then you've got our air barrier on the exterior of the brick. We also removed balconies. This was strategic, so we didn't have the capital repair liability anymore, but also they were never used, and obviously helps with the thermal bridging. And we're cladding it in rock wool, so that's not up yet, but it's going to be soon. And if we look at some of these measures in suite, so first off, the as-found conditions, I should say. So everything was deteriorated: flooring, ducting, plumbing, millwork, electrical. Everything was in a state of such disrepair that it needed to be removed and replaced. There was also extensive mold. This was an unfortunate site discovery. So the exterior walls concealed mold everywhere in the building. So on all floors, we had to take out those exterior internal walls. And then even the envelope had issues. So slab edges, windows, masonry, roof, all of that. So now these are the measures we took. So life safety, so we added those sprinklers, fire alarm system. For comfort, we did air conditioning, some ceiling fans. So we have light active cooling, we're calling it. Then the exterior and interior were both insulated. The mold finding gave us that opportunity to actually change our design slightly so that we had more insulation on the inside, which was more cost effective. And then new systems also included heat recovery, direct ducting of fresh air into every unit instead of in the corridors, new plumbing, new electrical. We also did accessible units, so 20% of the building was converted to full accessibility, which we're pretty excited about. And for the most technical folks, here are some of the new building stats or projected stats based on the extensive modeling. So you can see there's sort of a 10 times reduction in heating demand as well as in air tightness. So I should also note, this is the correct, the modeling we conducted was, verified by a third party. It is also based on research from 25 years in Europe. So we're fairly confident that it's going to perform as modeled. And then, so we just also wanted to note, as we've gone through this renovation, we've been documenting everything, and CMHC has provided funding to do that, as well as we're looking for further funding from them and from NSERC and others in collaboration with U of T and the Center for Urban Growth and Renewal to actually monitor for the next few years some of the, not just energy outcomes, but the non-financial outcomes as well. And we would be remiss if we didn't mention some of the challenges just at a very high level, but anyone who's done construction in Ontario or BC, probably other locations as well, the market conditions in the last 3 years have been very unusual and quite expensive to build. We, as mentioned, there were site conditions, just some things that you could not discover unless you did considerable demolition as you were scoping the project. So there's those items. Also the funding, it's been excellent working with FCM and CMHC and others. And at times, I just say it's challenging to secure, not only having a great project, but also seeing it through to sign off. So there's that. And then, doing things for the first time, you're even with the best talent in the industry, you're still having new learning. So we've got a great team, but we're also learning on this one. There's the team and the funders, and of course we couldn't do it without either. And that's really it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you both, Tom and Sean, for a great presentation and giving us an overview of where this transformation journey is headed. So we're going to look forward to going through some of the questions after the presentation, but now we're going to hear from our Programs Outreach Manager, Rachel Deslauriers, who will be talking to you, taking you through the green municipal funds funding opportunities in the energy sector.
Hi, so now you can see my face. I shared my camera. So we're going to start today and focus more on the energy sector, like Juliana was saying earlier. So you can, there you go. So as you just saw, the project that was presented to you before was funded through the GMF under our current offer for energy, so energy retrofits for buildings. I'm going to give you examples of projects later on in the energy sector that are not related to buildings, but just I'll give you an overview of who's eligible and how you can apply and how to do it and what can we fund. So basically all the technical information that you need to fill out an application with us. So first off, who can apply? The funding is available to all Canadian municipal governments and their partners, which include the private sector, the Indigenous communities, municipal-owned corporation, regional, provincial, or territorial organization delivering municipal services. So this is important. We do have some regions that are organized as a region, but and deliver the municipal services, so they can apply to us. Non-government organization and not-for-profit organization and research institute. What's important to note here is that we are looking for a municipal partnership. What does a municipal partnership means? The easiest way to have municipal partnership is to have some financial contributions from the municipalities. So for a capital project, we're looking at in the range of 10% cash contribution. If you can do a cash contribution as a municipality, it is possible to fund through, for example, tax incentives, giving land, things like that. So we're open to discussion, but what we really want is the municipality to be committed and not just to the project and not just being like, oh yeah, this would be a good idea. Like we really need to have a strong commitment from municipalities. So what we fund plan studies, pilot project, and capital projects. Our offer was designed that way so that you can start with the Green Municipal Fund from the planning process all the way to the implementation of the capital projects. So it's important to note that for capital projects like the one that was presented, it's very important to have a feasibility study that will measure the technical and the financial feasibility of the project. So really what we're looking at, like in a renovation of a building, is to measure, for a feasibility study, is to measure the feasibility of meeting our target, which means in a feasibility study, you can, for example, do all the energy modeling for your building and to show that you're going to meet our requirements. So it's very important to understand that the feasibility study is not just like comparing technology and seeing the pros and cons. We encourage you to do that, but if you want to use your feasibility study for capital project investment, it needs to show that you can actually reach our targets. So for funding, now we're diving in a little bit more. So for plants, we can finance up to 50% of eligible costs to a maximum of 175 grand. This is a grant. Studies, it's the same details, and it's also a grant. And for pilot project, it's from 50 to 80% of eligible cost to a maximum of 500,000 in grants. So to access the 80%, because everybody's excited about the 80%, you have to be a community of less than 20,000 people. So this is really to foster innovation in smaller communities with less capacity. So we realize that innovation, and this is what we're looking for in terms of pilot project, is to actually test something out, not necessarily just from a technical perspective, but also in like a new way of doing things. But we want you to implement it and test it out. So we understand that innovation for smaller communities can be more difficult from a capacity perspective, and this is why we're giving a little bit more grant money to be able to help you out with trying something new. For capital project, it's a mix of loan and grants. So we cover up to 80% of eligible costs to a maximum, we say 5 to 10 million, but really it's 10 million maximum. And if you have interesting, innovative projects, that total cost could be more than 10 million. Then we encourage you to contact us because we have a little bit of wiggle room in that area as well. So again, mix of loan and grants. Usually the combination, the grant portion is 15% of the loan amount, so that's typical. Our interest rates are very competitive on the market, and if you can have a better rate somewhere else, then we want to negotiate with you. So it's not like we're not Walmart. We're not necessarily saying that we're going to match the prices, but we're open for discussion, that's for sure. So the funding streams that we cover were covered earlier in the presentation by Juliana, but I'm just repeating it. So it's energy, waste, brownfield, transportation, and water. And if you go on our website, you'll see that we have very specific eligible criteria for each of them at the moment. This is, I'm saying at the moment because this is subject to change in the future as we're trying to be more inclusive and a little bit less restrictive in projects. So we also have a category that's called signature projects. So if you don't see your project in one of those categories and in the eligibility criteria that's publicized on the website, you can always give us a call and we'll see if it's something that we can fund through the signature project. The signature project, the idea is to promote innovation and transformation of market, always with high environmental benefits. So because we're the Green Municipal Fund, we're looking for municipal project with high environmental benefits. So really, that's where you can get your funding, but we have that category for either very integrated exceptional projects that don't quite make it in one category but are more all-encompassing, or for really good projects that we didn't think about because that happened in the past. So now we have this category that can help us fund great projects. So now we're diving in a little bit into the eligibility criteria, and I'm giving you examples of projects that we funded in those categories. So the first one is, the first category is energy recovery or district energy system. So the initiative, the criteria is that the initiative must reduce fossil fuel or grid electricity used by at least 40% compared to the current performance. And so examples in that category are energy generation from waste, construction retrofit of district energy system, using residual biomass to displace fossil fuel in existing district energy system. So the project that we have here is Aquaterra from City of Grand Prairie. So the district, it's a district energy system fueled by the methane gas capture from the city landfill, and is servicing the city's water and wastewater treatment plant. It is a capital project that we funded, total project value of $8.5 million about. They got a grant of $500,000 and a loan of $5 million. So we have the next category are buildings. So in buildings for new builds, our criteria is the initiative must aim to meet net zero energy performance. And for renewal of building, I think it's 40% above NECB at 2011. This is subject to change because we're revising our offer in energy soon, and it's getting easier to meet that target. Maybe some of you are cringing right now saying it's not easy, but we're starting to have some good renovation projects that we had in the past. So that's kind of being revised. Not as we speak, but I would say in the next year or so. So this is something to remember, is that we revise our offer on a 4 or 5 year basis. We're up for renewal of the offer for the energy sector, but we got an add-on of money that I'm going to talk about a little later that kind of forced us into creating new sectors, exciting new sectors, but that we put all our manpower, or people power, I should say, on creating those new sectors. So so the revision of our criteria has been put on the back burner for a little bit, but it is going to be revised eventually. So it's good to, you know, keep in touch so that you can have the latest before you start working on your project. So for new builds, we have an example, an exciting example here, the Evolve 1 building that we funded their feasibility study for the total project value was $350, and they got a grant for half of that amount, so 50%. So the Evolve building, it's the City of Waterloo in partnership with the Region of Waterloo and Sustainable Waterloo Region that wanted to do a building that was net positive. So basically producing more energy than it uses, and also having net positive air quality, which is very exciting. So this project is now built, and it's the first rental building of its category in Canada, LEED Platinum. So very exciting building, close to transit systems as well. Great. So the next one is City of Halifax, Halifax Solar City. So here the criteria is retrofit of community projects. So this is something that is being underutilized at the moment, but you'll see that our new sector offers are going to really kind of get the pedal to the metal for that one. So the criteria at the moment is that the projects need to have a combination of energy efficiency retrofit and must have the potential to reduce energy use by at least 10% to the current baseline. Examples here are, for example, harvesting energy from process loads or waste, upgrading building components, advanced HVAC system, things like that. So Halifax Solar City was a total project cost of close to $9 million. They received a $5.4 million loan and a 10% grant on that. So basically, Halifax Solar City, the original municipality, offered innovative financing for solar thermal energy to homeowners through a solar collector account. And it was very successful. It's been running for a few years now, and they are actually looking into expanding the program. So this is a project that keeps on giving that we're very excited about. So the next one is in transportation. So we have two eligible criteria for transportation. One is that the project should reduce GHG emission by 20% compared to an existing baseline. And things that we can fund in that category are purchasing properly sized municipal vehicles, alternative fuel infrastructure, sustainable autonomous vehicles used for private or municipal owned vehicles, fuel switching, and intelligent transportation systems. This particular project is an interesting pilot project in transportation that was done with 10 different municipalities in Quebec. The idea is that they purchased electric vehicles for their municipal fleet. So it did cover fuel switching, but they offer the vehicles in car sharing when not used by the municipality, so off hours. So it's kind of kill two birds with one stone, that's what it is, by offering an alternative mode of transportation to the population while reducing their fossil fuel consumption for their municipal buildings. So that's very exciting. And there's a lot of municipalities in Quebec and New Brunswick, and I think Manitoba too, that are looking into implementing that in their community. So our last one is in transportation again. So for transportation networks and commuting options. So the criteria here is to reduce the number of vehicles on the road, the number of kilometers travel, or the amount of I'm sorry, my notes were kind of cut out. So transporting with people and goods, so reducing the kilometers traveled for transporting people and goods, and get people to use their vehicle more efficiently or switch to less polluting forms of transportation. So in this category, we're looking at ride sharing and ride hailing program, last mile, first mile initiative, bike paths, bike sharing, connecting commuters to park and ride facilities, things like that. So this is kind of an underutilized category that we have now. So we're really looking at projects. So if you have good ideas, contact us, because there's a great need in the sector and not as much initiative. So the project that we're talking about here is also a pilot project from Okotoks. The total project value was close to $1 million, and the grant was $350,000. So this was done by a non-for-profit. So the Nonprofit Community Energy Association was conducted a pilot project to mainstream the plug-in hybrid and battery electric vehicles in collaboration with the regional district. So the objectives of this pilot project was to address gaps in charging station in the Kootenays and supporting market transformation for electric vehicles. So what FCM funding can do for you as a summary is loan for your municipal project, competitive low interest rates, like I was telling you, and also our rates are fixed on the fixed term 20 or 10-year loan fixed that you can count on in the future. So your amounts are not going to change, which is great. So when you do the math, it actually makes sense. And like I said, the interest rates are open to negotiation if the interest rate that we offer you at first glance is not as interesting as you thought. You always need to take into consideration that we give you a grant. So we use the term effective interest rates, which is because our true interest rates are close to market. But when you take into account that we give you a grant, our effective interest rates are quite low and competitive. So you can contact us through our website, and also to be, I'm going to talk to you about the new funding that is coming up. So we're working hard at it. We're still in the last mile of the creation of these programs. But the federal budget 2019 significantly increased the contribution. We received $1 billion from the federal government in the spring, bringing our total fund to close to $2 billion now. So it's pretty impressive. We're all like, oh, great. And this $1 billion that we received is committed to 3 things. So the first one is energy efficiency, affordable, and social housing. So our friends in Hamilton are well aware of this new offer. We have home energy projects, PACE-like model. So this refers to the Halifax project that I presented to you. So renovation on residential housing, but either the renovation are put on unbilling or that they're put on the tax bill so that the investment is not linked to the homeowner, but it's linked to the home. And GHG reduction from large community buildings. This has not been created yet, so it's a later iteration of a new sector that we're going to get, but we're thinking about, in this category, we're covering arenas, large municipal buildings that require a lot of renovations, because the amount of buildings that are getting older is big in Canada. So GMF is working on the details of this offer at the moment, and it should be launched in spring of 2020, so stay tuned. And the best way of staying tuned is to connect to our e-newsletter, which is FCM Connect. So now I think we're good for questions.
Great. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing GMF's current and new funding offers coming soon. And thank you as well to Tom and Sean for their presentation. I think this really provides a great jumping point to discover these exciting energy efficiency opportunities coming up in Canada. So we have about 15 minutes remaining to tackle questions in the chat function, so feel free to keep them coming. We have a wide range of them. Some of them are more specifically related to the social housing transformation project, and others more towards GMF funding. So I'll assemble them and move through them. So to start off, Tom and Sean, there's quite a few questions relating to both the technical aspects of the energy measures for the retrofit, but also people are really interested in learning more about the planning phase of the project. For example, people are really interested in how you managed to get council buy-in for the project, and if you considered or what you considered putting in your business case to sell the project.
Thanks, Julia. It's Tom, and I'll just start with the question around the approval. So it was through our board, and then subsequently, so for some of the financing, it had to be secured through the city of Hamilton. And when we worked through the feasibility study and presented that information to our board, and I think what was important when we shared with them the variation in cost of to restore it to a traditional building condition assessment kind of based model, then looking at what it would cost to rebuild, which was certainly significant, then versus what was available through grants at that time, and with the financing that would be required, that it was feasible to move forward. So it really was presenting those three aspects within our business case, and the board and the city's support of high performance leading to more sustainable community, which received approval.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to move towards a GMF funding related question. Could implementation of a pilot project and documented results be sufficient to proceed with a capital project? That is, to fully implement the pilot project, or would a feasibility study also be required?
Well, it depends on the level of information that you get from the pilot. So like I was saying, we want to be able to know the performance of the program beforehand, what you're thinking of doing, and how you're going to meet our targets. So we did have projects, for example, the transportation project that I presented. They're doing a pilot, they're going to have data, they're going to be able to show the value of their vehicle, and they could extrapolate that on the whole fleet, for example, could be sufficient for a capital investment. In other areas, like for a building renovation, for example, that might be a little bit more difficult because you need to have all the energy modeling done. So you would need to maybe complement a pilot project by some elements of feasibility study in there. But if that's the case, we encourage you to contact the outreach advisors. We have a team of advisors that can help you with your specific project and answer these questions to make sure to position yourself appropriately for the capital project.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Oh, and Sean here, I could just back to the technical question. Is that useful?
Sure. It was a little bit, the sound cut off a little bit. So could you repeat that?
Oh yeah, so I could jump back in on the technical side. So just to speak to some of the innovations and how we approach the whole passive house. In terms of the passive house approach, it's really about the thermal bridging, dealing with that, and the air tightness. And then sort of thirdly is the insulation. So just for those who aren't as familiar with that approach. And then in terms of some of the sort of outcomes we're achieving, we're looking at $30 to $40 per unit to heat and cool annually. So that's the level of performance that we're expecting from the building. And another notable thing is we're heating and cooling through the ventilation system. So there's only one duct entry per unit, and we actually removed the radiant heat which had failed out of the building. So and then, as mentioned, there is an ERV, and there's all sorts of levels of control, but essentially we're making it very simple for tenants to use, and very difficult for anything to go wrong in terms of how they control the temperature. So I don't know if that is on some of the technical questions, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in and adding that piece of information. A lot of people have other sort of technical questions around the increased insulation, for example. So people were wondering, how much will the room square footage change with that?
Oh, actually, okay, a great one. So the square footage won't actually change more than something like an inch, just because had to remove the exterior side of the interior walls, and that gave us that opportunity to insulate a modest amount there, but then the rest is on the exterior. So we really weren't compromising the interior square footage at all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. And one more follow-up question with respect to the technical facets. How important is lowering air tightness from an energy use perspective, in your opinion?
Oh yeah, so it's pretty dramatic. Yeah, I mean, it's not as hard as you would think on a multi-unit building, though. So it's, with just all we did is some trades training for the teams working on the building, run by some experts, and did some mock-ups and some practice work, and they got it. And I'm sure that the trades working on this building will just use the level of care and quality in other buildings too. And as long as that's sort of overseen by a team that has an air tightness goal, it's actually not very difficult to achieve. But it is so important. Otherwise you could have durability issues in the wall. Some of the things that we encountered, like the mold, it's from a design flaw in how it was originally constructed, and we're just seeing the results 50 years on. So there's lots of good reasons to have it very airtight and then control it through mechanical ventilation.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sean. I'm going to direct a more technical question towards Rachel. Would the GMF energy funding offer finance energy efficiency even if the grid claims to have an emission factor of 0 or extremely near 0 GHGs, or would it only be linked to waste and energy type projects?
No, so yes, we could fund that. So we take the grid into consideration in our calculation. We know that we have provinces where the grid is very efficient, and that GHG reduction project can be challenging because of that. So you are not being penalized because you have a clean grid.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. Back to CityHousing Hamilton. So people are really excited to hear about the resilience benefits of the project, that the building could be occupied for a few days without power. We were also really excited by that. Were there any specific resilience or adaptation funding sources that did or could have supported that benefit?
So any funding sources today?
Yeah, were there any sources that funded that particular part of the project per se?
You know what, I mean, it wasn't a requirement necessarily for any of the sources that we had received funding for, but I mean, we'd like to think that it was something that was appreciated, right? So I mean, we're dramatically increasing the resiliency, and we know from past experience it's a huge benefit to us for when disaster does strike. So, but yeah, so in that feasibility study we initially completed, we didn't have that level of modeling done, but we did allude to the resiliency. So we think, and it did inform and help improve some of our funding.
Interesting. And in terms of the maintenance of the building, did you have a plan in place to ensure that the ventilation stays, balanced over a period of time?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a significantly different building that will operate differently than our others. So we fully expect, as part of the commissioning process, to document the maintenance that will be required, and that we'll create some type of user manual and do tours for our maintenance and capital teams. So all that is part of the official commissioning of the building. Ultimately, we designed a system that is very simple to not only to operate, but to repair and maintain too, and keep in balance. So a lot of thought has gone into that. I mean, the reality is we don't have adequate funds to repair our buildings, so we need to sort of look into the future and make it really simple. So we tried to do that here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Great, thank you. So another question for Rachel. We seem to have a lot of smaller, more rural communities on the line with us today. So people are wondering, how GMF can help support energy reduction in those types of municipalities?
Okay, so I don't want to, so if I'm not answering the question that people had in mind, please elaborate, because it can be pretty wide of an answer that I'm going to give. So our eligibility criteria allows for projects from municipalities of all sizes. So it doesn't matter if you're a large or a small community. For example, we'll have application for net zero fire halls in municipalities than less than 2,000. So they can build to our criteria. We do acknowledge the fact that smaller municipalities typically have less capacity to deal with the project management in-house. So how can we address that is when there's the pilot project that we cover 80% of the cost, but also the cost of hiring consultants is eligible. Staff cost is also eligible. So if you want to hire somebody and keep the knowledge in-house to do the work, you can. So the staff cost is eligible as long as you have proof that they're working on that specific project. And the criteria is done, like I said, for municipalities of all sizes. We do have some areas that are more popular, I would say, with more rural communities. For example, a small district energy system based on biomass, for example. We have some good projects of that, like really small system between like the city hall, the school, and the church, for example, like 3 buildings on biomass, and that actually generated profit from day one. So we do have the business case for that as well. So one thing that we do and are looking into doing even more is that we're going to soon hire a business case specialist that's going to be able to help applicants just present their project to the council so that it makes not only technical sense but financial sense. So how do you present it? A little bit like our partners did today, of the cost, like the incremental cost of the investment, and looking at your operational costs. How much can you save? And that speaks for itself usually with a municipal council. But really, like I hinted to in my presentation, we have a team of advisors that can help you out. So you can always give us a call, and then we can help you with the specifics of your project. And if you have particular issues regarding something related more to the size of your municipality, we can try to help you out as much as possible by sharing experiences of other municipalities that did it, and also match you with projects that are similar to the one that you're trying to do.
Great, thanks.
So I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah,
but
provided a pretty good overview, I think. So we have a couple of minutes left before the end of the webinar. I'm just going to ask Tom and Sean if you have any specific key takeaways. You talked a little bit about the lessons you learned, but if you were to give advice to other communities that are, thinking of embarking on a similar journey, what would you say?
Okay. Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah. It is a massive undertaking, repairing and renewing a building that has fallen so far. So, I mean, obviously, the best is to avoid these situations. This was by far the worst one in our portfolio and the oldest, so it was everything at once. But if you can't avoid it and you have one that has gone this far, I think if timelines allow for funding to do demolition, maybe not all of it, but to phase in some demolition that's pretty substantial to uncover site conditions, just makes your life easier later. It's not like you're going to save money on items that needed to be done anyways, but you'll at least know as you fully scope the project. So for us, there was mechanical, sanitary, and mold issues that were all covered in the building that were not at all accessible. So it would have been helpful to know those just as to inform our decisions. So I would say some selective demo at the start, beyond just structural, beyond just the easy things. So.
And it's Tom, just wanting to add that, you know, we have focused a lot, you know, on the building, the construction aspect of it, you know, site discoveries, and to my earlier comment just around support. You know, not only, you know, do you have to, you know, understand what is the business case relative to the building, but we also had to have a good relationship, partnerships with housing services. They're the department within the city that oversees our funding, and so we had to look at a new model for rental options within that building. So there was, you know, there was negotiation that had to happen there. We also had to negotiate with them the vacancy loss. So that was another factor, right? And we were fortunate that we were able to maintain the operating subsidy even though the units were vacant. But we had aspects around security costs and you know, and there was some flooding in the building, which also, you know, when it was empty, so that was beneficial to us. So I think it's looking at, you know, I think it's really doing a lot of focused work on what are the risks, what are the vulnerabilities, and I do think you do have to look at, you know, what with potential escalation in the project, you know, how would you respond to that, and, you know, is there support to see it through to the finish.
Wow, thank you both so much for providing those insights and for really taking the time to talk through this initiative. It's incredibly exciting, and thank you to Rachel as well for presenting the funding offer. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Just a few reminders. We unfortunately couldn't cover all of the questions you had, but you will have Sean and Tom's contact information on the slides, and we strongly encourage you to reach out to our outreach advisors if you have any specific questions about the funding. I don't have the email currently on the slides, but we're sending it to you via the chat box. It's pretty simple, programs@fcm.ca, if you have any specific questions regarding funding. So another reminder is to please join us again next week on February 27th as we look at sustainable transportation networks. We'll actually be hearing about the development of the Accelerate Cunays project, the one that Rachel was talking about earlier, and we'll be learning more about GMF funding opportunities in this transportation sector. Before you go, we would really appreciate it if you could take just a couple of minutes to fill out a short survey about the webinar. It would be really useful for us to learn more what sort of topics interest you and how we could better target our efforts into meeting your needs. So that's all we have for today. Thank you all again for participating, and thank you again to our panelists for taking the time to talk to us. Have a good day.